Today, I'm going to tell you a story so quiet and aching that it lingers long after the last word is spoken, set in the vast American West, where cold nights, open skies, and unspoken longing shape every choice. It's a place where lives collide at the edge of duty and desire, where one step forward can cost you everything. And it all begins with a single moment, a simple goodbye, at a cabin door small enough to seem harmless, yet powerful enough to change two lives forever. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Willa Crow had been saying goodnight to Ashen at the door of his cabin for 3 long months, and every farewell cut a little deeper than the one before. She would pause on the worn plank threshold, shawl pulled tight around her shoulders, the Montana sky thrown wide above them, stars sharp and bright, like chips of glass. She spoke the polite words habit demanded good night. "Thank you for the evening. I'll see you tomorrow." Then turned and walked into the dark, back to the rented room in Stone Creek, back to the narrow bed where sleep came late and thoughts of him came fast. She couldn't say when love had taken hold. Maybe it crept in, slowly built from 1,000 small moments, until the weight of it surprised her. Or maybe it struck all at once, the look, the pause, the certainty that something in her life had shifted and would never slide back into place. She couldn't name the second when friendship tipped into something else. She only knew it had happened, and that now each good night felt like a quiet loss, a small tearing she endured again and again. 2 years earlier, she had come west to the Montana Territory to teach at a modest school that served both the white settlement and Red Hollow beyond the ridge. At 26, unmarried, her family had quietly written her off as a likely spinster and decided the frontier suited her well enough, where women were scarce and even a plain schoolteacher might find a husband. She hadn't come chasing marriage. She had come looking for purpose, for something solid to fill the hollow that opened when her mother, Elsbeth Crow, died and left her alone in a family that didn't know what to do with a daughter who wanted more than a ring and a household. Teaching gave her that purpose. She found it in bright faces, in the instant a lesson took root, in the simple truth that her work mattered beyond her own small life. She was content, if not fully, then close enough to breathe. She wasn't looking for love. Love found her anyway. It came in the shape of a man from Red Hollow, who served as a bridge between worlds, a steady presence, who dealt with the iron ledger and still returned each week to her classroom to teach the Dustfield children their language and their past so they wouldn't lose themselves to the rules pressed down on them. Ashen was unlike any man she'd known. Where others were loud, he was quiet. Where they rushed, he weighed his steps. Where they were coarse, he was gentle. He listened more than he spoke, watched more than he moved. And when he did speak, his words carried a gravity that made people stop and hear him. There was a stillness about him she couldn't resist, a way of standing fully in the moment instead of leaning toward the next. They began as friends bound by the children and the work they shared. They talked lessons and progress, cursed the paperwork and the waiting, celebrated small victories, and felt the sting of setbacks together. Soon their talks wandered past school walls into pasts and fears, hopes, and half-formed dreams. She learned he had once been married, that he had loved Sana fiercely, and that she had died 5 years before from spotted fever, taking with her the child she carried, Kai. She learned how grief had hollowed him, how he had convinced himself a wanting was finished for him. And sometimes, in the way he looked at her, she saw that grief loosening that his heart remembered how to reach. She told him things she'd never said aloud about her mother's death, her father Amos Crow's distance, the siblings who found her strange, the suitors who treated her like a last choice. She spoke of the loneliness that pushed her west and the quiet fear that she might spend her life skirting the edges, never truly belonging. Their friendship deepened so gradually she couldn't mark the crossing. Maybe it was the first time he took her hand, on a walk, a simple touch that sent a shock through her. Maybe it was the night he cooked for her, sharing food from his own traditions and the stories braided through each dish. Maybe it was the dawn they watched together from his porch, talking until the sky broke open and then falling into an easy silence. Or maybe it was the kiss 3 months ago, soft, careful, and world-altering. After that, they were more than friends and less than lovers. They spent evenings together when they could, talking and touching, learning the shape of each other without stepping past the line. They kissed long, unguarded kisses that stole her breath and tested both their restraint. They held each other and traced the borders of what they dared to claim. And always at night's end, Willa said goodnight at the door and walked back to town alone. It wasn't that she didn't want to stay. She wanted it fiercely, a wanting that grew sharper by the week. But there were rules and eyes and consequences. She was a white schoolteacher whose reputation kept her employed. He stood between worlds, already unsteady on their feet. If she stayed, if they crossed that line, they would gamble everything they had built. So she left. Night after night, she left. She said goodnight, walked away, and lay awake in her narrow bed, aching and telling herself she'd chosen wisely, that caution was kindness, that she was protecting them both. But tonight felt different. They had spent the evening the way they always did, sharing a simple meal, trading stories from the day, drifting closer as the hours slipped by. The fire burned low, throwing slow shadows across the cabin. And Ashen had kissed her, then drawing her into his lap, holding her tight against his chest, while his mouth lingered on hers until her head spun. His hands moved with quiet hunger, following the line of her waist, resting at the small of her back, threading through her hair. Willa didn't stop him. She leaned into him, answered every touch, gave herself to the moment, with a reckless honesty she would have feared if she hadn't already gone too far to turn back. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless, shaken by what had passed between them. Willa knew she had to leave. If she stayed another minute, she wouldn't leave at all. "I should go," she said, the words scraping her throat raw. "It's late." Ashen nodded and let her go, steady and respectful even now. He helped her to her feet, lifted her fallen shawl and settled it over her shoulders, his fingers lingering, as if reluctant to part. Together, they walked to the door as they always did. Willa turned to face him, met those dark eyes she loved more than she had ever dared to admit, and forced the familiar words past her lips. "Good night, Ashen. Thank you for the evening." The words sounded thin, useless, nothing like what she felt. But they were the shield she hid behind the lie that said she was still in control. She turned for the door, reached for the latch, braced herself for the cold walk back to Stone Creek and the colder bed waiting there. Then his hand closed around her wrist. She stopped, short breath, catching heart hammering hard enough to hurt. His grip was firm but gentle, not holding her captive, only asking her to wait. "Willa." She turned back, and what she saw in his face nearly took her knees from under her. There was hunger there, yes, but also something raw, open, and fiercely hopeful. "Don't go," he said, his voice rough, strained. "Stay." The word hung between them, small and heavy, carrying more weight than a dozen promises. Willa felt the world narrow to that instant to him, to the choice she had been avoiding for months because she knew the truth of it. "Ashen," she breathed, unsure whether she meant to argue or surrender. He didn't wait. He guided her back inside, gentle but unyielding, and closed the door. The latch clicked loud in the sudden stillness. "I know every reason you should leave," he said, cupping her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. "I repeat them to myself every night after you're gone. I know the risks. I know what this world does to people like us. He searched her eyes. But I can't keep watching you walk away. I can't keep lying alone knowing you're doing the same, both of us wanting the same thing and pretending fear is enough reason to deny it. Tears burned in Willa's eyes. It isn't that simple, she whispered. If we face it together, Ajin said. Whatever comes, we face it together. I won't spend another night watching you leave, when all I want is for you to stay. Friendship isn't enough. Kisses aren't enough. These lines we've drawn are cages. He rested his forehead against hers, breath warm against her lips. I love you. He said the words dropping between them like stones in still water. I have for months. He drew back just enough to see her. I was afraid to say it, afraid to ask for more than you were ready to give. But I won't be silent anymore. I love you, Willa. I want you to stay, not just tonight. I want a life with you. She was crying now, tears slipping free because she had wanted these words for so long and never believed they would be spoken. I'm afraid, she admitted, of what we might lose, of the world and what it will do to us. I know, Ashen said quietly. I'm afraid too, but I'm more afraid of never having you. He met her gaze. Stay, he said again. Choose us. Choose to stop running from what we feel and start moving toward it. Stay with me tonight, and tomorrow we'll face whatever comes next together. Stay with me, Willa. Please. She studied him, this man who had split her heart open and filled it with something fierce and bright, who had shown her she was capable of loving and deserving of love in return. She thought of all the nights she had turned away, all the times she had chosen safety over joy, all the years she had hovered at the edges of her own life, because stepping fully into it had felt too dangerous. And then she made her choice. Yes, she said the word steady and certain, not surrender but resolve. I'll stay tonight and every night after. I love you, Ashen. I've been afraid to say it, afraid to feel it, afraid of everything it might change. I'm done being afraid. I choose you. I choose us. I choose to stop saying goodnight at the door and start waking up in your arms. The smile that broke across his face was unlike anything she had ever seen. Light poured through him, softening every hard line, making him look younger, freer, alive. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the kisses that had come before. Those earlier kisses had always stopped short, restrained, careful. This one held nothing back. It was release and promise all at once, a celebration of what they were finally claiming. It was deep and sure, the kind of kiss that spoke of hunger, answered at last. When they parted, Willa laughed, pure, unguarded joy bursting free. I can't believe I almost walked away again, she said. I almost said goodnight and left you here alone. But you didn't, Ashen replied. You stayed. That's what matters. He took her hand and led her from the door into the cabin she had visited so many times without ever truly entering. Past the table where they had shared countless meals, past the chairs worn smooth by long talks, to the bed in the corner, the one she had imagined and denied herself, afraid of what claiming it would mean. Are you certain, he asked, pausing, giving her space one last chance to turn back. Staying can mean many things. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for. She looked at him, at the man she loved, and the future they were choosing. I'm ready, she said. I have been for months. I was just too afraid to admit it. I want everything with you tonight, and for the rest of my life. They came together with a tenderness that drew tears from her eyes, with a passion that left her breathless, with a sense of completeness she finally understood. He touched her, as if she were precious, kissed her, as if she were sacred, loved her, as if she were the answer he had been searching for. She met him with the same reverence and desire, holding nothing back, letting him know every part of her she had kept hidden. She was open in ways she had never allowed before, and the freedom of it was intoxicating. They learned each other through the long night, shared quiet words between kisses, laughter between sighs, and held one another until dawn crept in. When morning came, Willa woke in his arms, her head resting against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. She smiled, knowing she was exactly where she belonged. "Good morning," he murmured into her hair. "Good morning," she answered, and the words felt like a blessing, like the beginning of the life she had been waiting for. She had said good night at the door so many times before, but this time he had pulled her back inside. This time he had asked her to stay, and this time she had said yes. In the weeks and months that followed, they built a life that defied both their worlds. There were whispers and doubts, practical worries and hard choices, but they faced them together, as he had promised. They found ways through what once seemed impossible, made compromises that let them both keep their work, and built a home that belonged to them somewhere between Red Hollow and Stone Creek Folk, between past and future. And every night when the day's work was done and they returned to the cabin they shared, Willa felt gratitude so sharp it nearly brought her to her knees. She had almost walked away, almost chosen fear over happiness, almost missed everything. But he had pulled her back inside. He had asked her to stay, and she had been brave enough to listen. That was the night everything changed, the night she stopped being afraid and started living. The night she learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay. She had said goodnight at the door once more, and she never said it there again. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening and for allowing this story to speak to your heart. The Wild West still holds countless truths, some painful, some tender, all worth remembering. Stay with us, subscribe, comment, and invite others to discover these untamed stories. From our hearts to yours, thank you for being part of this journey. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Each story shared here is produced for storytelling enjoyment. Certain scenes may include fictional or dramatized elements inspired by historical circumstances. Although AI tools assist us in visuals narration and script development, the emotional tone, editing, and quality control are conducted by people to ensure meaningful experiences. We fully uphold YouTube's policies, using no deceptive recreations or impersonations of real individuals. All creative resources are properly licensed. Unauthorized copying, re-uploading, or remixing is not permitted. Thank you for supporting the effort behind every episode we create.